Hell is bad vibes. Today's stories are on kidnapping. Joining me today are a group of very talented female narrators. They will be reading one story each and I'll be reading the rest. Timestamps and channel links will be in the description. Please subscribe to all the ones you enjoy, as it will really help them out. And sit back, relax, and enjoy. When I turned 9, my parents finally let me start walking to school. It wasn't far, and even though they were worried, I assured them that I'd be fine. I was so excited because my best friend lived next door, and that meant we could walk to school together every day. Things were going great for the first few weeks, and we had so much fun laughing and talking all the way to school and back home. There was this liquor store along the way that we would stop at on the way home to get snacks and candies, but only on Fridays. It was our little secret and the thing we looked forward to at the end of the week. One Friday afternoon, we began our walk to the liquor store, talking about school as usual. It was just like any other time we went to the store. We would rush in laughing all the way to the candy, pick our favorites, and hop in line to pay. This time, there was a man with a pack of beer, and he looked like he worked in construction or something. He was in line before us with another man, but when he saw us, he let us go first. We thought he was just being nice, so we happily obliged. And as I talked to the cashier, my friend stayed behind me. I could hear the two men speaking in Spanish and laughing, so I turned to look and see my friend with a nervous look on her face. She grabbed my arm after I paid and practically pulled me out of the store. I kept asking her what was wrong, and she said she didn't feel safe and we should run home. I was confused and I wanted us to enjoy our candy on the way back like we always did until she told me what she had heard. I don't speak Spanish, but she did, and apparently the two men were talking about me. She said that one of them pointed to me and said, "She looks like the one." They both laughed and agreed, and the one with his beer said, "Let's follow them so we can grab her around the corner. She's small and won't put up a fight." I froze in fear. We were still in the parking lot of the store and we didn't know what to do. We looked around us and saw the two men getting into a big work truck. They didn't even glance our way, so I told my friend that they were probably joking and we were just paranoid for being scared. Boy, was I wrong. My friend didn't agree with me and said that they were definitely serious and we should start running. I was hesitant at first until I turned around and the truck was right behind us. I took one look at my friend and we grabbed hands and ran as fast as we could. Our hearts were racing and we didn't dare turn around. We were both crying and I ended up dropping my bag of candy. We turned the corner and there was the truck. My heart dropped. The man in the passenger seat hopped out and began to approach us. He didn't say a word. His eyes were just locked on me. I have never been that terrified in my life. I was frozen in fear. My friend, however, started yelling at the man in Spanish, and he seemed to get angry. There was a busy road to the left of us, and it was our only way out. We knew what we had to do without even saying it. We didn't look left or right, we just ran for our lives across traffic. A car almost ended up hitting us, but they slammed on the brakes and started honking. We just kept running until we were a block away from our houses. We were out of breath and hysterical. We thought we had made it until we heard a whistle. There was a truck. The men were on the other side of the street, windows down, whistling at us. We had no option but to run as fast as we could to our house. My mom was in the front gardening, and she was shocked to see us running and screaming. We couldn't get the words out right. All we managed to say was that there was a truck following us. My mom immediately ran to the street to see the truck peel away. As soon as she calmed us down, she called the cops to take a report, but nothing ever came of it, and I was never allowed to walk to school again. So I think I almost got kidnapped today. I can't even believe I'm typing that. I had finished work early on Friday and was excited for the weekend. I left work around 3:30 p.m. and started walking to my car. It was about a 1 kilometer walk to my car, and you have to go down this creepy alley that's about 200 meters long. So just before I got to this alleyway, this man out of nowhere said, "You're so beautiful." And I was straight away creeped out, but he was walking in the opposite direction, so I just kept going. Then about 50 meters down this alley, I turned and I saw him there walking like a creep, just staring at me. So I started walking faster, and then he started speed walking. I can't really even explain it. At this point, I just sprinted, and then he sprinted. I didn't think, I was just glad that I had my keys already. Luckily, I got into my car and started it, and just went. He stopped running then, but I just feel empty. I cried a lot on the way home, and then took a shower because I felt dirty, but now I feel empty. This story is from a while ago, in my past. I'm a female, and at the time, I was 14 years old. My mom dropped me off at the local mall during the day to meet up with some friends. My friends had not arrived yet, so I continued on by myself and window shopped a bit. For context, I grew up in an area with plenty of human trafficking, only a few hour drive from the border. As I was walking down the rows of stores, this man in his mid to late 20s approached me and struck up a conversation. It was polite at first, flirty. He mentioned how beautiful I was and how attracted he was to me. For additional context, I was right in the middle of puberty, starved for attention, and in a very awkward phase of my physical appearance. This man kept complimenting my appearance and eventually grabbed my hand. He kept saying that his family lives in California and he wants me to come live with him and his family. He was mentioning marriage and how much his mom would love me and how much I would love California. At this point, I knew something was off, but my meek self couldn't figure out how to say no and exit the situation. The man's tone started increasing in urgency when he was asking me to come with him. He really wanted me to come to California with him, despite me being half his age. The man said, "You have to come with me right now." At this point, I didn't like that he had a hold of my hand. I said, "I have to go, my mom is going to be here soon," and I bolted into the nearest store. I never saw the man again. Did I call the authorities about this? No, but I should have. Did I tell my parents about this? Of course not. I wouldn't ever be allowed to go to the mall again if they knew this happened. I live in a small city. We are a college town, but otherwise pretty boring. Yet I've almost been kidnapped 2 times, and both times were saved by sheer luck. The first time was when I was in elementary school. A friend and I were walking up the road that ran along our apartment complex, headed to a gas station for some snacks and drinks. It was near sunset, but not nearly dark yet. A van pulled up next to us and started slowing down. There were 2 men in front and 1 in the back. My friend noticed before I did and pulled out her flip phone. They weren't common at this point. The moment she pulls it up, the van takes off and out of there. The second time was only a few years ago, in my early 20s. It was about 3 a.m. and I was walking home on what would have just become a Tuesday because we held D&D Monday nights and it usually ran late. The place our dungeon master lived was 2 blocks down from my house, so typically I wasn't worried about the walk. I got about a block away and I hear a garage door open loudly behind me. The particular house it was attached to had a boarded up door and several boarded windows. It certainly didn't look like anyone lived there. Then I start to hear footsteps behind me. Not very fast, but I wasn't far away, so they could easily outpace me with my small legs. Then, out of nowhere, a truck pulled onto the road. They stopped and turned on their brights, basically stopping my follower in their tracks. They watched and made sure that I got home safe and wasn't followed for the rest of the way home. One of the scariest nights of my life by far. Years ago when I was 18 or 19, I went to an anime convention with some of my friends and we stayed at a hotel that was tucked away from everyone else. The road was set up in a T-junction, with the longer part connecting to the main road. On one side being our hotel cluster, and the other side was pitch dark that went under a bridge and didn't look like it had an end to it. Some of my friends got lost trying to meet me midway, so I decided to walk to the main road instead, which was about a half-mile away, because this area wasn't too well lit, and once I made it to the main road, they would be able to see me better. So I'm on the side of the sidewalk, going in the direction of traffic, if there had been cars out, but it was 11 at night, and at this time, this hotel wasn't well known, so there were no cars on the road. As I'm walking horizontal from the hotel to get to the intersection that would take me to the road to connect me to the main road, a white van pulls up beside me and starts slowly driving along with me. There's a man in the front seat and he asks me where I'm going, which is of course the main street. And I let him know that I'm heading over to the gas station in the corner. The sliding side door opens and there's another man in the car. The back seats were all completely removed. The back portion of the van had a vinyl flooring or something to that effect, and a white, hard outdoor plastic chair sitting in the back. Both men kept asking me where I was going and if they could give me a ride, and how it wasn't safe out here, and that they could give me a lift to the shop that I needed to go to. It was super fortunate that after the first minute or so, some cars came down the road, and one of the cars slowed down and started flashing their lights. I then crossed so that I was on the opposite side of them and proceeded to run to the gas station without stopping. The mental imagery of that van showing up and the interior will never leave my mind. What in the actual fuck? Me, my best friend, her girlfriend, and my boyfriend were walking home from dinner and stopped at a 7-Eleven. My boyfriend wanted a couple of beers, so we waited outside while he got what he needed. As we were outside, I noticed a girl with a backpack walking around the parking lot. She walked up to another girl who was on the phone, and the girl on the phone said to whoever she was talking to, "Yeah, my homegirl here, 1 second," and proceeded to tell the girl to sit in the car occupied by a large man while she went inside. I noticed the male and the girl looking at us from the car while the other girl was still on the phone inside. I specifically noticed that the male said something and pointed, and the girl laughed at us while looking at us. Here's where things get sketchy. The girl in the car gets out of the car and comes up to my friend. She asked her if she has a pen and paper. My friend tells her that she has a pen but no paper, and we didn't have any either. Here's how the conversation went after she retrieved the pen. "Where do you live? The trailer park behind here?" "No, but nearby." "Oh, okay, my grandma lives here. Where do you work?" My friend tells her where she works. "Oh really? I know that place. My sister used to work there. What's your name again? You look familiar." My friend gives her name. "Oh yeah, I knew you looked familiar." My friend had never seen her before, and gave a slight chuckle. Then the girl says, "How far until you're home?" At this time, my boyfriend came out of the store. The moment he did, the girl instantly wrapped up the conversation and quickly retreated back to the car, saying, "Well, thanks for the pen," not even returning it, nor did she write anything the entire time. She also kept trying to touch my friend. I did notice that, specifically at her wrist. The girl also had a hospital band on. I also noticed that the man watched us the entire interaction and said something to the girl the minute she opened the car door. He seemed frustrated at her. They watched us until we walked off a minute or two later. Then they proceeded to sit in the car for at least 3 minutes. At least that's how long it took until they were out of my sight. Probably longer since they made no effort to pull off. Is this sketchy to anyone else? Has someone heard of this type of thing before? I'm especially worried as my friend doesn't have a car and walks everywhere. Second post here, starting to feel more comfortable sharing my life experiences. One morning around 7:30, pre-pandemic, I decided to go to Walmart to get some necessities before the crazy weekend Walmart frenzy. It was fairly empty at this time on a Saturday, I went dressed in a giant Pink Floyd tee and jean shorts, some boots, no makeup. And I'll say this now, I've been mistaken as a high schooler when I was actually 23 at the time. So I'm minding my own business walking down to the shampoo aisle, and I see a creepy older man standing on the right. Didn't think much of it, just passing by him. As I passed him, he grabbed my arm and said, "Hey, let's go get coffee." This is the first time something like this has ever happened to me, so I was shocked and said, "What?" His voice was distorted, and I thought that he had some speech or mental problems. He kept repeating the same thing while pulling me forcefully, until I snapped out of my shock, took his hand off of mine, and yelled for him not to touch me and to leave me alone. After I walked away, I walked into a random aisle to see if he would follow me, and sure enough, he did. My anger got the best of me, and I screamed so loud for him to stop following me. I found the manager and told him what happened, and even he was freaked out. He let all the employees know, and I had someone escort me to my car. Ladies need to stay alert and safe, and don't have to be polite towards people like this. He probably thought I was younger than what I was or something. Not sure what would have happened if I went to get coffee with him. Stay safe, everyone. Now this is pretty tame compared to all the other stories here, but it wasn't until recently, at the age of 20, that I realized that I was probably almost abducted. The details are short since I was very young, and I think I blocked out most of it. I was about 6 or 7 playing outside alone. I grew up in a very safe neighborhood, so it wasn't uncommon for me to play outside unattended. I was drawing on a sidewalk with chalk when a car pulled up beside me. It looked like it was a middle-aged man, saying, "Hey little girl, come here," and I stupidly stood up and walked over to see what he wanted. He goes, "Do you like puppies?" Of course, what little girl doesn't like puppies? So I said yes, and he goes, "Well, I lost my puppy, and I've been looking for him. If you come with me to help look, you can pet him when I find him." I was like, "Fuck yeah," and go, "Yeah, let me ask my mom if I can come," and turned around and bolted towards the house to go ask, because I knew I had to ask before I went somewhere. But I heard him speed off, and my stupid brain went, he must have seen his dog ahead. And then I just went inside. I thought of this recently and realized that this man's motives were not innocent here. When I was 6, I went with my mom, uncle, and grandparents to the airport. My grandparents were taking an international flight. This was in the late 80s, so this meant we were allowed to walk all the way to the gate and wait for my grandparents right before they boarded the plane. Times have changed, and this is no longer allowed. My mom was sitting with my grandparents having a conversation. My uncle was off getting coffee somewhere. Being 6 years old, I became bored of sitting and started wandering off a little. My mom called me to her and gave me the stranger danger talk and how I needed to stay with them. My attitude was, yeah, whatever. Again, my mom got distracted by my grandparents' questions and I began to wander off again. I peeked my head and looked down the hallway. There were people coming and going. Less than 15 feet from me, I saw a creepy man. Long brown hair to his waist, dressed in black leather head to toe, beard and a mustache. He was about to open a door, which I'm assuming now was a bathroom. As he's opening the door, he looked right at me and waved his finger for me to come over there. I immediately thought of the conversation my mom just had with me a few minutes ago, plus this guy looked evil, so I immediately turned and ran back to my mom. I said, "Guess what, Mom? A stranger was trying to take me. You were right." I don't remember her taking me very seriously. She was helping my grandparents with their tickets and wasn't paying too much attention. When it was time to leave, I took a quick peek down the hall and he was gone. I think to this day what would have happened if I went to him, if my mom didn't talk to me about strangers just a few minutes before. I know that this wouldn't have turned out good. I was about 8 or 9 years old walking home from my best friend's house back to my home. A guy pulled up beside me wearing a police uniform. Seemed totally legit, but who knows. But he was driving a super shitty sedan, like one of those old Buick-like boats. He was really aggressive and assertive, telling me to get in the car, that I need to go with him right now. He told me that my dad was in the hospital and sent him to get me. My mom was in an accident, but he is here to take me to her. I totally lost my cool, felt super sketched out, and I burst out crying. This guy shouted at me to get into his car. I panicked and just started sprinting all the way home. I get home and my dad is watering the garden, cool as anything, and I'm completely losing my mind, absolutely hysterical. He calms me down, hears the story, and calls 911. He gives him the description, and sure enough they catch a guy with a 13-year-old girl in the back seat, who he managed to talk into going with him.
Hi, this is Almost Kidnapped at a Festival. Me, 25 female, and previous girlfriend, 27 female, were at Elements Festival probably 3 years ago or so. Knowing what I know now, I would have never went. 2 young girls alone to the Bronx. I found a cheap hotel that would work for the night. Being a Holiday Inn, I thought it was a safe bet. When we checked in, the room was definitely disgusting. Holes and stains on the sheets and pillowcases, a nasty stench, and the door wouldn't lock properly. We called in to the front desk to complain and ask for new sheets and towels, which they did bring up, but we did not feel comfortable to ever talk to the worker again due to his strange and overall creepy behavior of peeping in our room and asking if we are alone, and what we are up to for the night, etc. So already off to a weird start from the beginning, and we didn't even arrive to the festival yet. The overall festival was fun, definitely a different crowd than we were used to. Usually the festivities and shows we went to is all loving, accepting, nice people, and this crowd just felt off, rude, and just party animals. Throughout the night, we made our way to different stages and performers waiting for Grizz, the main reason we wanted to come to this festival. With him being the final performer of the night and the last stage open, it filled up pretty quickly, but we got lucky with a great spot on the upper deck overlooking everything. The set started and it was amazing, until 3 older men approached us, offering a vape pen to smoke. We politely declined and tried going back to enjoy the set, but they would not stop pushing it. We automatically got the creeps and were very weirded out and decided we needed to move away from these men, so we agreed to go to the bathroom and just never went back to that spot again. Being how many people were there, we didn't think we would run into them again or that they would be able to find us, but we were wrong. We went down to the middle of the crowd, and me, being the paranoid person I am, still felt very strange and like we were being watched, even in the middle of hundreds of other people surrounding us. I periodically scan around us, and sure enough, they were not very far behind us, just standing there. So we moved again. The set ended, and we were ready to get the hell out of there, and made our way to the exit gates along with everyone else. Sure enough, I turn around, and there all 3 men are following closely behind. At this point, they need to realize I am onto them as I lock eyes with them and just stare. No matter what, they would not stop following us. I found a close-by group of around 10 people and told them about what was going on as there was literally no security around. They invited us to join their group, and we stepped off to the side to take a seat, while some of them took a bathroom break. At this point, I was sure they would leave us alone, but instead, the men all sat on the bench next to us, and I was terrified. I motioned over to one of the girls that rescued us because they were asking us about the whole situation and made them aware it was the men that were sitting less than 5 feet away from me. The entire group confronted them, asking what they wanted, and at that point, they got up and walked away. As we were waiting for the exit gate for an Uber, the group slowly got smaller and smaller as their rides were showing up, until it was just my girlfriend and I. We were terrified the men would show back up. I was even terrified of the Uber at that point. Luckily, our ride showed up, and we didn't have any more run-ins with the 3 men, but we didn't necessarily feel safe going back to the hotel with the creepy front desk man, so needless to say, we didn't sleep much that night. I'm so grateful for the group that helped us, and honestly probably saved our life, as I can say I never felt such a dark and eerie feeling as I felt from these men. Advice from this story: always be aware of your surroundings.
Hi, this is Danie Dreadful. Now that I'm much older and have my kids, I'm so much more aware of the world we live in. As a teen, I would walk about 10 minutes to my bus stop. One week, I noticed a neighbor, a few houses down from mine, would slowly follow me every morning in his car and would wave at me. Sometimes I'd smile and just keep walking. Now that I think of it, he was probably trying to gain my trust. Anyways, finally, one day he stopped me and asked me for directions. He asked me where is Lewis Street, and I was puzzled as I had seen him drive many times by this street. This street was the main entrance to our neighborhood, so there is no way he didn't know where it was. I asked him, "Excuse me, what do you mean?" He insisted he didn't know and if I could get in his car and show him. Right there is when I started walking away and towards my bus stop. He continued to follow me and tried to get my attention once more. "Let me give you a ride to your bus stop." I politely said no a couple of times. He kept insisting. Finally, I made it to the corner where the rest of the kids were and he drove off. After that day, he would still follow me, but I give him no attention and either walk at a much earlier time or walk the opposite way. I don't know if he finally realized I was no fool, but I'm glad I trusted my gut and was not naive and got in that car. Who knows what his true intentions were? I think about it on how lucky I am, because that day could have probably changed my life. And because of this, I refuse to let my kids walk. Kids should not be out there walking.
A couple years ago, I, 21-year-old female, was solo backpacking in France and made a day trip out to Versailles from Paris. You have to take 2 separate trains to both get out there and get back. I got on my first train heading back from Versailles and my phone was at 3%, so I had it on airplane mode and low power. But I had my headphones in without anything playing to deter people from approaching me. John didn't care. He came over and sat beside me, speaking to me in French. I'd been walking around the gardens all day and wasn't really in the mood to entertain anyone. So I pretended that I didn't understand French. He pulled out his phone and went on to Google Translate, asking if I wanted to learn French, and I responded with, "No, thank you," and went to put my headphones back in and appear even more uninterested since my body language wasn't enough for him. He continued to ask me questions through his phone, the next one being, "Where are you sleeping?" I lied and said that I was in a large hotel with my family and was heading back to them. He asked where it was and all I replied with was Paris. He then asked if I was getting off at a specific stop of the subway, which I said yes, to which is another lie, and he said that he would go with me. I immediately said no, and I ended the conversation. I got my headphones in and completely closed them off from talking to me, which prompted him to leave me alone for a couple minutes. He then got a phone call and said to his friend, "Yeah, I'll get off at X stop and you go to Y stop." This set off danger alarms in my head because Y stop is the actual stop that I was getting off at. We got to the transfer station and he got up and off the train and waited for me at the doors. I took my sweet-ass time getting up and making sure that I had everything, to the point that it was very obvious that I was doing it on purpose. He then left to get on the other train, and I slowly made my way off and to the next train. And I mean painfully slowly. I got on the train at the very front and was watching everyone around me to make sure that nobody was being suspicious or watching me, to the point that they all probably thought that I was on something. We got to X stop and I'm watching the people going off and coming on, as well as anyone on the platform, but I see no sign of him or anyone paying much attention to me. We get to stop Y, and I get off with the crowd, turn the corner, and he's there with 4 friends, scanning everyone coming out. I turned around so fast and went the exact opposite way, taking my hair out of my bun and trying to change my appearance as much as I possibly could. And as soon as I got out of the train station, I ran back to my hostel and refused to leave it, unless I was with one of my roommates. So, sorry you got outsmarted by a dumb blonde, but dude, let's never meet again.
Hi, this is 242 Reads. To start this off, I am 16 years old and a girl, but my body and personality have always been much older than I am. This took place when I was about 10, right after my mom had went to jail again, and it's not the only bad thing that has happened to me. In fact, my very religious and superstitious family believes I was just born with bad luck, but this takes the cake. My mother had been dating who we will call Adam for quite a while, and my sister loved him, but me, being younger and protective of my mother, I did not. I had always been told I looked just like my mom, and I never believed people until now. But the day it happened was a week after she just went back to prison for violating parole and being found in possession of narcotics. Adam had come to my home begging my grandmother to let him take me out for ice cream, claiming my mother had told him he could. We had later found out that this was not true. My grandmother was going to let him, but I had no intentions on going with him and even told him to go fuck yourself, much to my grandmother's displeasure. So I wasn't allowed to go for cursing. All the entire month after that, he would show up at my school during lunch and bring me food, which I wouldn't eat. Told my teachers I was to go home with him, not on the school bus. So I snuck on the bus with my friends and even showed up at our field trip to another state for 4 days. That is where it happened. While waiting in line for food, a cop car came speeding up to the picnic area, and quickly 2 police officers had tackled Adam. It turns out he had done things too and got rid of 2 little girls around my age there, and had admitted to wanting to do the same to me. My family now respects my bad feelings about people, and I dropped out of public school after a few girls from my grade found out about it. They would taunt me and call my mother all kinds of names. And well, when you have the height and strength of a middle schooler at 10, it was easy for me to lose my temper, and I had gotten in loads of trouble. So remember, please, that sometimes that gut feeling about people can be right.
Thank you, Bad Vibes, for an awesome girl power narration night. This is Rose Red, bringing you a true story from Tangerine Sally. So, I'm female and was 21 years old when this happened. Just out of college and got a job with a local bank. The bank shared a parking lot with a McDonald's and several other small businesses. On this particular day, it was a beautiful 78 degrees. The bank had a small conference room to which employees could eat, but it had no windows. I didn't want to waste an hour eating lunch in a dark, stuffy room. I decided to eat my lunch in my car. By noon, the parking lot was packed with other cars coming and going from the nearby businesses. I sat with my air conditioning on and listening to music when I hear a knock on my driver's side window. I look up to see a good-looking guy wearing a suit, smiling at me, indicating to me he wanted to talk. Annoyed that he was interrupting my lunch, I rolled my window down just enough to hear him. He seemed to have the salesman personality, but seemed pleasant. He pointed to a white van in the row ahead of mine. He said that he had speakers in the back and wanted to give them to me. Said I could turn around and sell it for $1,800. In my mind, I'm thinking, well, why would you want to give them to me if you yourself could get $1,800? I quietly look at the white van. The back is open with another guy just casually standing there, pretending to fidget with something. Then I think, no, you just want to get me out of my car so I can walk over and you and your buddy can push me into the back. I play nonchalant and say, no thanks, got to go. And this is where Pleasant turned to angry as hell very fast. He made some comment that I wasn't smart enough to appreciate a good opportunity, and I probably liked Barbies better. His manipulative tactic didn't work. I started up the engine and closed the window and quietly drove off. Several months after, I'd forgotten about this. Now, one of our customers came in to report some guy going around trying to give away a speaker to someone else in the parking lot. I never knew what became of that incident. Now, the fact that the parking lot was so full of people was the only thing that convinced me they meant no harm as we spoke. But again, crime can happen in broad daylight anywhere or anytime. Still, I listened to my instincts, and I'm glad I did. Oftentimes we think people who are out to hurt us are poorly dressed, ugly-looking, horns on their head like the devil. But this guy was none of those. I could have mistaken him for another banking client. I heard later there was a trafficking ring in the area later that eventually authorities got involved. Not too far from the area, I filled up with gas while going home. A man nearest to my pump got out and said he was new to the area and needed help getting around and wanted my number. He was very forceful, so I gave him a fake one and drove off. I don't know if this was another attempt or some random weirdo, but I left my job soon after.
Hello, my beautiful hauntlings. I'm Mia Mina. I want to thank Bad Vibes Storytelling for including me in this collab. I am honored to be here. I hope you will all enjoy this story. Now, let me whisper in your ears. I think I was almost kidnapped when I was 14 by Stickboy 108. This happened during my freshman year of high school. A friend and I, let's call him D, were walking to another friend's house, let's call him G. It was late afternoon, and my house is only like a 10-minute walk from G's house as we live in the same general neighborhood. Our neighborhood is kind of in the boonies of our town, though, and so part of the road leading to G's house has us walking beside a huge dirt field. So when Dee and I turned the corner and started walking along this part of the road, we noticed an RV parked in the dirt next to the road. As we were walking, this middle-aged guy steps out of the RV and starts calling us over. We stopped a couple yards from him, and he starts asking us if we can help him fix something inside his RV. I remember he was being extremely vague about what he needed help with, but it had something to do with fixing the RV itself. Kind of a strange thing to request of two 14-year-olds. So of course this puts me on alert, but not enough to stop me from helping the guy. I didn't really understand why. I guess maybe it's just hard for me to tell people no, but I still had the sense to have some caution. So I told Dee not to go in with me, and that if anything happens, he needs to go get help. So right as I start walking towards the guy, G's mom drives by and notices us. She pulls over and asks us if we're on our way to G's house. We tell her yes, and she says something like, "Okay, then I'll see you guys in a minute," and drives away. At that point, I kept walking toward the guy, and he tells us never mind and that he doesn't need our help anymore. So Dee and I kept walking to G's house and kind of just forgot about it. Honestly, it's hard for me to tell for certain, but so much about that interaction was strange, especially him changing his mind once there was an adult witness. It wasn't until like years later that I thought about it again and realized I should have reported the encounter.
This is Lady Spookaria. Creepy man? Or do I listen to too much true crime? It's 6 a.m. on Friday morning, and I'm packed and leaving for a weekend girls' trip. I have to drive approximately an hour to the nearest city to meet up with them. Before we road trip to the destination city, I am a bit frazzled when I leave because I, of course, putted around the house until it's the exact time to leave, and now I feel rushed. To set the scene a little, I live on a crescent in a subdivision on the outskirts of town. It connects to a truck bypass, which has some fast food shops and gas stations along the way. But the main stores and amenities are in town, about an 8-minute drive away. I drive past all the houses on my street still shrouded in darkness, and notice there aren't any vehicles running in driveways or driving on the quiet street. I feel good to be one of the only ones awake before dawn, and I'm excited to get the weekend started. As I am pulling out to the main subdivision street that connects with the bypass, I realize I hadn't set up my GPS or messaged the girls to let them know I was on the way. I pull off the side of the dark street and park in front of a parked work truck that I always see there and know is associated with a house across from it. I am busy looking at my blinding phone screen when I look up and notice a bright headlight shining in my driver's side mirror. I look over my right shoulder at the truck behind me, and it doesn't appear to be on. I crane my neck over my left shoulder and notice a large SUV has parked up beside the truck and behind me. I can't place why someone would pull their vehicle over there when I recall that there is plenty of space behind the truck. I figure they may think I'm stopped before the stoplight 30 meters ahead, even though I'm clearly off the road. So I roll my window down and wave them around me. I look back down at my phone to finish messaging the girls when I see a shadow approaching my vehicle. I see a man staring at my door with his hands in his pockets. He appears to be in his late 50s with a scruffy beard, wearing a beige plaid bulky jacket. He has placed himself slightly before my door, so I have to crane my neck back to see him. I roll my window down a crack and squeak out, "Yes?" He appears to be fidgeting in his pockets and says in a slight accent, "Do you live around here?" I think that's a strange thing to ask, but reply slowly, "Yes." "Is this your hometown?" He fidgets some more. "Yes," I say firmly. "It's not." "Do you know where the Walmart is from here?" he asks. Every true crime show, podcast, book has told me a man never asks a woman for help. So my spidey senses are going off. But he isn't really asking for help, just directions, right? Now my people pleaser side comes out and I feel the need to give him directions. I keep staring at his hands and not his face, still in his poke pockets, not fidgeting. He then pulls out his cell phone and says something about how it doesn't work and he can't figure it out. I don't look at the phone or offer to help with it. He is 10 minutes from the Walmart. However, it does not make sense that he would end up in this subdivision. None of the main roads lead to it, from any direction. The bypass is the only way in, but someone who's traveling on it could not mistake that this is just a subdivision and a park. If he were lost, I would have seen him turn in from the bypass I was facing, which he had not. He came from deeper in the subdivision. Things are not adding up, and all the bells are ringing in my head. Get out! There is a curb in front of me, so I'd have to angle out towards him, which would bring him closer to me and would cause me to run over his feet. I don't want to set him off, but I also don't want to cause a scene. If this is just some regular guy innocently seeking directions. Again, with the people pleasing. In case he tries to reach in, I decide to roll the window up a little more. As I am watching his hands, face and overall body language, I spit out the easiest directions to the Walmart and reach down to hit the window button as it's an automatic and keeps going up. So I hit it down to stop it, but it keeps going down. I panic and hit it up again. Now I am worried he has seen the panic on my face. I finish the directions through a now tiny crack. I say, "Oh, okay," and place my hands on my wheel. He turns and walks back to his truck. I pull out quickly and make a right onto the bypass, and watch him in my rear view make the left I had directed him to. As I am driving away, I realize Walmart doesn't open for another 2 hours.
Some background to this. I'm an 18-year-old female and I live in Sydney, Australia. I was 15 at the time. I went to the local beach by myself and was just sitting there suntanning. I had a podcast going, ironically, about a murder case, and I had my sunsies on. The beach is probably 1 kilometer long, and I was in a very quaint and quiet part. There were a group of 2 boys about 50 meters away from me, but that was about it. So I'm laying there when this man walks over. He seemed to be about 30 years old. He starts talking about how I look beautiful in my red bikini. He had a very thick accent, and I just said, "Oh, thanks," and he sat down next to me. I had an instant gut feeling that something was wrong. He starts talking to me about how he's a tourist and kept trying to get to know me. I gave him some advice on bars around, but he said, "Aren't you still in high school?" So he obviously knew I was young. Anyway, this went on for 20 minutes, and he started talking, practically begging for me to come over to his house for a few drinks. I kept saying no and was looking for a way out. This group of girls around 20 years old walked near me, and I say to the man, "Oh, that's my cousin Lisa." I immediately ran up to them and said that I'm only 15 and I don't know this man. I told him that you're my cousin. Immediately, they gave me hugs, saying they haven't seen me for so long, etc. They told me to come sit with them and to grab my bag and towel. The man immediately walks off. Honestly, I'm so thankful that the girls caught on. The man was just extremely creepy, constantly commenting on my looks while knowing I was young. Edit, I may have overreacted by immediately thinking that I was going to be trafficked, but I do think something shady was up. This happened back when I was 10, and now that I'm older, I realize how scary this actually was for me. One Sunday after church, my mom took me to get some coffee at Starbucks. When we arrived, I asked my mom to let me go alone to order because I wanted to be all grown up and learn to do it myself. With a lot of persuading, my mom lets me go in. She parked right in front and had a full view of me the whole time through the front window. Once in, I wait in the long line. Almost immediately after getting into line, I feel a tap on my shoulder from behind. I turn to see an older man, about mid-40s. He says to me, "You look familiar. You look just like my niece." I thought that maybe he was old and just being nice, so I responded and told him, "That's cool." I turned back around to continue in line, but then he asked me if I was alone. That's when I get a little spooked. As I'm about to say no, an angel of a lady came over next to me and said, "Do you know this man? Are you okay?" I told her no, that I didn't. She turned to the man and told him to stop talking to me. She asked if I was with someone and I pointed to my mom outside. She then stayed with me until I got my drink and then walked me out to my mom. My mom knew what happened after the fact, and until I got older she never let me go in alone again. Understandably so. It's pretty freaky to think about it now that I'm older and have a better understanding of the world. To this day, I'll never forget that lady who watched out for me. Growing up, I was terrified of kidnappers, hearing about them all the time, and how they would target little kids mainly for their organs. I'm male and was 10, living in Athens, Greece. It was a normal morning walk to school, and I was about to cross the intersection. Then my school would be 2 minutes of straight walking. As I'm about to cross the intersection, a woman approached me. She was pretty tall and wearing a brown coat. I could tell that she was of Russian or maybe Ukrainian origin by her accent. Anyway, our conversation went like this. "Where are you going?" "To school." "Your school's not that way. Come, I'll take you to school." Then she proceeded to grab my hand. I immediately started running towards my school, and thank God the light was red for the cars when I crossed the road. As soon as I crossed, she yelled at me to come back and that my school isn't that way. Then a stop driver saw what was going on and yelled at her to leave the kid alone. I never looked back, I just ran straight to school. Later that evening, I told my parents what happened, and I never asked about the topic again. We live in a cruel world with people like that, walking among us targeting kids. My case was broad daylight and on a busy street too. I hope no kid has to experience something like that. When I was younger, around my freshman or sophomore year of high school, I used to walk to school often, and I liked getting some sort of exercise before school started. One morning in winter, it snowed, but school wasn't called off, so I walked there anyways. While ice isn't the ideal condition for me to walk, I had no way to get another ride. It was about halfway there when a minivan pulled up next to me and the driver rolled down the window. It was some middle-aged lady giving me a friendly smile. "Do you need a ride to school?" she asked. I shook my head. "No thanks, I'm already halfway there, and I don't live that far away." I was always taught to never trust strangers, even if it were a condition I'd rather get a ride in. "Are you sure? It sure is slick out. I just came back from dropping off my son, so it wouldn't be a problem." At this point, she was slowly rolling her van forward while I walked. I kept calm, gave her a friendly smile and shook my head. "No thank you, ma'am. I appreciate the offer, but I would rather walk." Luckily, she gave up after that, waving and saying goodbye before pulling away. While it's totally possible it was a friendly mom who didn't like to see other kids walking in the snow and ice, it really creeped me out at the time. I wasn't willing to take the chance, and even looking back on it now, I feel good about my decision. So when I was 10 or 11 years old, I was with my nephew going to get groceries for his mom. When we were on our way, we saw a lady crying and asking people for help. My nephew was going to the lady to ask her what was going on, while I stayed back waiting for him. Apparently, her son got kidnapped and she was asking if we had seen him. So while the lady was explaining things to my nephew, a car drove next to me and asked if I wanted to get into the car. I obviously said no, but when I looked closer at the car, I saw a kid crying in the back seat. All of a sudden my nephew yells at me, "Run!" I was scared and me and my nephew ran as fast as we could. The car kept chasing us until, thank God, we made it home safe. What I think is that the lady told my nephew that her kid was inside that car. Kinda crazy. P.S. We came home without the groceries.